to start recording. Okay, thank you everybody for coming for our discussion of Fargo.
Yes.
We found Bart was good enough to find some snacks for us. Sorry, we can't share it with you guys on Zoom. Okay, our next gathering, we don't know the movie yet, but it's going to be January 25th, which will be the fourth Thursday in January. So you can save the dates for that. And if you're not already following us on Facebook and Twitter, it's Katz Reviews on Facebook and also Twitter. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel where many of these discussions are. And that's simply Ed Katz.
Simply Ed Katz.
Ed Katz, not the simply part.
Not simply.
Right. So I am Ed Katz. I'm your host. And if you're new, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. You may enter and sign in.
No December.
No, because it's Christmas to New Year's and it's just not a good time. So I'll take that time off. But I will send out what the movie will be because this was your vote. Fargo won the vote, barely beating French Connection. And the really funny thing I have to share with you, right after I finished watching Fargo on Max, you know, it suggests other movies. First movie, French Connection.
Oh.
I thought that was pretty fun. All right, so I'm sorry if you don't know me. So I do marketing and public relations by day, but I was a theater and film critic for a radio station in Connecticut for 2 years before we moved here. So it's a passion of mine, and I've been doing this kind of thing for years. Okay, so we're going to talk about Fargo, and there's a lot to discuss, whether you liked it or not. And I understand both perspectives very well because I feel you both. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just start with people who voted for the movie, for this movie. Show of hands.
As first
Okay.
or
A lot of you. Okay.
As first or whatever.
First or second. Let's go with that. Okay. All right. Great. So anyone want to say the reason why you chose it? Start with that.
Because it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay. And the reason?
It's funny. It's
Funny?
dark and funny. Very,
Dark and
very,
funny.
very funny.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was
Great
pretty
direction
fun.
and great acting.
Yes.
And I think it's one of these movies that if you see it on TV, if you're walking through the room and it's on there, you stop and watch, no matter how far into the movie it is.
Oh, yeah.
Godfather, or one of those other movies, you sit there and you just can't go, you can't leave it alone.
Right.
That's because you missed the snow.
Yeah, I'll talk about the snow. There's a lot to that too. Okay. Anyone else want to share their thoughts on why you voted for it?
The actress.
Frances McDormand. That's a great reason.
She's there.
I liked a lot of the Coen brothers movies.
Okay. Okay.
You know, Ed, I have to say, because I forgot.
Mm,
It's been so long.
Right.
I remember saying, oh yeah, I like that a lot. So I want to watch it again.
Okay. All right, good. I actually liked her better in Three Billboards.
Yeah.
I thought that was a phenomenal movie, and I thought she was totally outstanding. I think she was terrific in this, a little more underplayed, but that to me was her master role. But that's my opinion. Okay, who thought the movie was well done, effective storytelling?
Yep.
Who's mixed on that? Pretty much nobody. And who did not like it or did not think it was well done?
Oh, I thought it was well done.
Okay, all right. Anyone else not like the movie? Not like the movie? Okay, all right. We only a couple didn't like it. Okay. I know there's a couple others who didn't come because they didn't like it. They told me. That includes my wife, by the way. So that's why Anne liked it. She didn't like the violence and the whole dark atmosphere to the whole movie. That's kind of, as I say to her, it's not an Annie movie, you know.
It's not a Barbie movie either.
No. The stupidity of the movie or the characters? The characters. Okay.
But Ed,
Yes.
that wasn't stupidity. It was innocence versus the evil. Right. And there was so much symbolism in that movie. I don't know if I should say.
Yeah,
this,
sure,
but-
sure. We'll get into that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I would argue there was definitely some stupidity in the characters there. The Steve Buscemi character of Carl, I was trying to count all the mistakes he made, and I lost count at 6 or 7. Probably not that seat, because that's where they move the camera. You can take the chair if you need it, though. Yeah, feel great. Okay. All right, good to see you. Sorry?
You said you counted all the mistakes he made on purpose?
No, because he was stupid.
The character.
The character, yes,
But that's just.
not the filmmaker.
That's what Steve Buscemi always plays.
But he was a man. of
Not
confidence.
Often,
What?
often.
Yeah, often, yeah.
But
And the part was written for him, by the way.
Oh,
Yes.
makes sense.
would it have been as effective if it didn't have as much violence?
That's part of the Coen brothers thing, is to
Yeah.
shock with the way they do the violence. No Country for Old Men, which was their most awarded movie, 4 Oscars. Best Picture, a hard watch, but really well done, and mainly because of the way they do the violence and the crucial scene where you're expecting the violence and it didn't happen in that. Where he was gonna shoot the guy at the register, the cash register in the bodega, flips the coin, and the guy won the toss, so he lived. I mean, that was a powerful scene. Different movie, sorry, but I'm not gonna digress too much.
I hate the Coen brothers, but I like this movie.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, I'm very mixed on them. I gotta tell you, I did enjoy, and I had seen the movie before, which is why I put it on the list. But the first time I watched it with Ann, I didn't like it as much as when I watched it afterwards, the second time.
Yeah.
So I've actually seen it 3 times now.
About the violence, at the beginning, if you read everything it said, everything that happened, they did in the movie.
Well,
They claim they
okay.
said everything.
Here is the actual title card, which I'll show you on the Zoom in a second, but can you see it all? I took a screenshot. This is what it said.
What does it say? Truly.
It says, "This is a true story. The events depicted in this film took place in Minnesota in 1987. At the request of the survivors, the names have been changed. Out of respect for the dead, the rest has been told exactly as occurred." A complete lie.
Exactly.
What?
A complete lie.
I believe it.
So there are pieces,
I believed it until I.
there are
read that.
different pieces in the movie that actually happened. They were not interconnected at all. And the wood chipper thing actually happened in Connecticut, and I know because I lived in Connecticut when it was a big case. And the guy who was the criminal who was caught just got released from prison a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I bought a new wood chipper.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, and they were able to convict him. It was a landmark case. They were able to convict him because of the forensic evidence from the frozen pieces of the body that was his wife.
I can't believe he got released.
For good behavior after serving 20 years, yes.
Bad behavior.
Only 20 years.
Followed by good behavior.
That was pretty bad. Oh.
Yeah. So I was surprised, but yeah, he got out in mid 2020. So just in time for COVID.
Yeah, the barbecue restaurant.
All right, so the movie, got a 94 from the critics and a 92% approval from audiences. Very, very high. An 8.1 on IMDb. And the Rotten Tomatoes critics consensus line is: violent, quirky, and darkly funny, Fargo delivers an original crime story and a wonderful performance by McDormand. Okay, the production budget was a low $7 million. The box office, it made $24.5 million in the US, but a grand total worldwide of $60 million.
Wow.
60 million. Wow. It's listed as Joel being the director and Ethan being the producer, and both of them wrote it, the Coen brothers. It's kind of interchangeable the way they do it, from my understanding. The release date was March 15th of 1996. As to the title, anyone want to venture a guess as to why it was titled Fargo?
That was in US.
They had, yeah, it was far. They had to go far to do what they did.
I like that. I like that. They had to go far. I like that. Actually, the Coen brothers said because it sounded better than Brainerd. Okay,
Brainless.
but I like that. That was good.
Do you know how the Coen brothers got the story? You
No.
know, they got the material, what the history of that was?
It was from actual stories. The wood chipper incident in Connecticut was part of what inspired them.
Most they did a combo.
It was, they kind of Frankensteined it together, put the pieces together. Yeah.
And was she by any chance pregnant during the filming?
Nope. And there's a funny story about that I'll get to later. Yeah. Nope, not at all. That was, they fabricated it in the writing just to, I think, further differentiate her from the criminals, was my take on it. Okay, so it was, Fargo was nominated for 7 Oscars. It won 2, Best Screenplay and Frances McDormand Best Actress, even though she doesn't actually make an appearance in the movie until like 33 minutes in, which is kind of unusual. The Coen brothers have made many, many other movies. They've gotten 42 Oscar nominations overall, 21 Golden Globes, and 38 BAFTAs, you know, the British awards. The only ones they won for the Oscar were the 2 for Fargo and the 4 for No Country for Old Men. The other movies they had nominations for were Barton Fink, and I will admit to you, I have tried twice to get through that movie and I couldn't do it.
Which one?
John Turturro, and I just couldn't do it. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou got a couple nominations. Amanda wasn't there. No Country for Old Men had 8 and won 4. Burn After Reading, not an Oscar nomination, had others. A Serious Man, True Grit, Inside Llewyn Davis, I didn't love. Hail Caesar, I didn't love. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, anyone see that? It was a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
Couple segments I liked, a couple I absolutely hated. It was very mixed. And most recently, The Tragedy of Macbeth a couple of years ago. I did not see that one yet. They also did a serious, I mentioned A Serious Man. They did Blood Simple and Raising Arizona. And I did kind of like Raising Arizona. I thought that was pretty funny. And The Hudsucker Proxy also. Oh, and then another one, not nominated, but big cult favorite, The Big Lebowski.
You know, no.
Oh, yeah. People rave about that.
No nomination. Nope.
There should be some 20-year later award.
Well, actually, that was what I read. It was that it really started to gain critical acceptance later, not initially, which happens, you know, it happens.
Did they do Miller's Crossing?
Yes,
Yeah.
but again, no nominations on that one.
And True Grit had no nomination?
No, it did. It had 10 nominations,
Oh,
didn't win it.
Oh, didn't win it.
That was their most nominated movie. They actually also wrote the screenplay for Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks, but Spielberg directed that one, which I thought was pretty interesting. All right, so a little background on the Coen brothers. They were born, you're going to be surprised where they were born, in Minnesota. I thought I have it here. Oh, maybe I do. Yeah. They direct and produce their films jointly. Oh, here it is, early life, right. Born and raised St. Louis Park, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis. The mother was an art historian at St. Cloud State University. The father, Edward Coen, was a professor of economics at University of Minnesota. The 2 brothers have an older sister, Deborah, who is a psychiatrist in Israel. And I guess they were asked at some point about their Jewish heritage affecting their work. Joel's answer: in regards to whether our background influences our filmmaking, who knows? We don't think about it. There's no doubt that our Jewish heritage affects how we see things. And that was it.
True.
They were Ashkenazi Jews from both sides of their family. The grandfather was a barrister in London. Edward Coen was an American citizen born in the US, but grew up in London. They developed an early interest in cinema through television. They grew up watching Italian films, and one of their inspiring directors was Federico Fellini. I'm very happy to tell you, one of my favorites. They also watched the Tarzan films a lot, and the comedies of Jerry Lewis, Bob Hope, and Doris Day. So kind of a very, very mixed.
Whole other side of the spectrum.
Very much so, yeah.
They almost sound normal.
In the mid-60s, Joel saved money from mowing lawns to buy a Super 8 camera. Together, they remade movies they saw on television with their neighborhood friend, Mark Zimmering. They also made original films like, this is very odd that I just read this, An original film they made when they were basically kids was Henry Kissinger, Man on the Go.
So when were they born? What are their
Yeah, he is.
They were born in late 50s, 54. 54 was Joel, 57 was Ethan.
So
They're in their late 60s. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, so Joel graduated from Bard College. Ethan went to Princeton, earned his undergraduate degree in philosophy. His senior thesis was a 41-page essay, Two Views of Wittgenstein's Later Philosophy. Now, interestingly enough, anyone know who Joel is married to?
Frances.
Frances McDormand.
Did you know that?
Since 1984.
I thought I remember that.
In 95, so the year before this movie came out, they adopted a son, Pedro McDormand Coen from Paraguay. He was 6 months old at the time. McDormand, Frances, has been in Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, Miller's Crossing, Barton Fink, this one, The Man Who Wasn't There, Burn After Eating, and Hail Caesar. Ethan married a film editor named Tricia Cook in 1990, and they had 2 children.
The moon is just.
Interestingly enough, one is named Buster, and they had their movie, Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Ethan and his family live in New York. Joel and Frances McDormand live in Marin County, California. Okay, I'm not gonna go there. All right. Now, is Fargo a true story? I've kind of given you some of the background, but there's kind of a lot on that actually. So the title card sparks a lot of debates. It says this is from movieweb.com. And the crimes that took place throughout the film are taken from actual cases. And it was the murder of Hell Crafts that was cited as the crime behind the making of Fargo, which was the wood chipper murder from Newtown, Connecticut. Yeah, and I've been to Newtown many times. It wasn't that far from us. Kraft stumbled upon the realization, the female Kraft, Hella, that her husband had been involved in several affairs with other women throughout their marriage. She became suspicious of him, and there was anxiety she was going to be murdered. She was last seen on her journey home from work, previously confided to a friend that if something happens to me, don't think it was an accident. Following her disappearance, he was the first to be questioned about her sudden vanishing. He prepared excuses to defend his innocence and made claims his partner was abroad visiting family or out of the country. She was declared a missing person in December 1st, 1986, about a decade before the movie. He became a prime suspect after a full investigation was launched. A maid previously recalled there were blood stains discovered shortly after she was formally declared a missing person. This is the kind of key clue. The husband's bank account revealed he had made 3 disturbing and alarming purchases: a wood chipper, a chainsaw, and a freezer. Okay. So I won't get into the murder, but they said it was a they got world-renowned forensic scientist Henry Lee, who I've met a couple times actually. He from Yale. He deemed Richard to be the killer. The case stands as the first murder investigation where a body was not fully recovered. Okay, how much of Fargo is true? It doesn't follow the traditional rules of creating an adaptation of true events. If anything, it can be described as segmented pieces of true stories stitched together, like an anthology series. It does rely on half-truths when creating the entire story. However, each event does not remotely relate to each other. Okay. So they didn't completely lie, but they kind of lied.
But you know what? If they had wanted it to be true, they would have said it is based on a true story. And that they
said this is a true story.
No, it's a true story.
No, this is, I gotta hear, this is a true story, all in caps.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
I believe
sorry.
them.
I thought so too. Yeah. A lot to happen in one little tower.
Right. Well, let's get into that. I want to get to my notes because I have my notes when what you just said reminded me, Stan. Oh, here it is, right here. Okay, great. Okay, so you remember the whiteout scene?
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you notice, look carefully at the very opening. There's a little black dot in the lower center of the screen. Anyone else see that?
I did.
So I'm looking at it going, did a pixel like burn out on my TV?
Right.
And then, I skipped forward just to check. Nope. No. So they put this tiny black dot on a field of white on the screen to, I think, show, my take is, this is the events you're about to see happen in this little dot, the black dot in the white snowy area. That's just my take. But they obviously did it intentionally. Any other thoughts? Anyone have any other thoughts on it?
Go back and look.
Yeah, I was looking going, and do you see, like, what the hell, So there it was. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, then the first thing of movement that you really see is the car being towed with a Minnesota license plate. And then it cuts to Fargo. And I'm thinking, okay, they're letting us know something's out of place. You're starting a movie called Fargo in Minnesota. And then the sign on the bar, remember the name of the bar? Close, King of Clubs, King of Clubs. But when I first saw it, it didn't look like that to me. I looked at it carefully. It looked like King of Chaos. And I looked at it carefully, and the light on the os part was much dimmer. So it did kind of look a little like King of Chaos, which kind of fits because when I'm reading the reviews, 3 or 4 of the critics mentioned chaos in the movie. So I thought that was kind of intentional as well. Another thing I noticed was about the names. So you've got Jerry Lundegaard, Wade Gustafson, the blonde criminal, Geir Grimsrud, and the policeman, Frances McDormand, Marge Gunderson. Kind of a combination of all the names, all very, Norwegian, Swedish, that kind of thing. Okay, so Marge was not only a cop, which I thought not only that made her very different, but she was pregnant too, which accentuated the difference between her here. These are killers taking lives, and here she's about to give birth to one, just to really accentuate the contrast.
Aside from the gender difference.
And the gender difference too. Very good point. Yep, it was all men doing the killing.
I
Yep.
thought it set her off from the other police officers as well.
Right. Well, she was also the only woman cop too.
Right.
And she was married to a painter.
Well, now that's an interesting story, Joel. Joel said she was married to a painter, which was true. But the Coen brothers told, what's his name again? The guy who played her husband.
Macy.
No, the
Norm.
yeah, but the actor.
In so many things.
You all love your.
Yeah, he was so great in the trial movie,
Shameless?
no, that's William H. Macy.
Oh, well, then we know.
He's a character actor, Richard
was
Dean
also-
Carroll. I forget his name, something.
Yeah, he was also in Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah, okay. He's been in a lot.
He plays the babysitter's father.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Yes, I remember that now. Right. Good point. Yes.
That's another movie I've seen many times.
That was a very good movie. Yeah, very funny.
So where were you going about the painter?
Yes, so the painter. So the Coen brothers told Marge and Norm to come up with their character's backstory. And what they came up with was they were both cops, but they determined that she was the better cop, so he was going to do something else. So he left the police force to become a painter. There you go. Okay.
Did we have that information given to us?
No. That came out of, interviews.
That was really low.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And pretty neat how his painting got chosen for a postage stamp.
But it only got 3 cents. Yeah. Right.
But they seem to have a very nice relationship.
Yes,
Yes.
which is another contrast too. Yeah, they were very supportive of each other.
Got up to make her breakfast.
What's the obsession with the food?
They actually, according to the Coen brothers, they acted a little too close to each other because the Coen brothers sort of chastised them for being a little too connected. There was a scene, there's almost every scene they have is with food with the two of them. I don't know if you noticed that. So he makes her breakfast and she's explaining something to him. And he was listening very intently, and the Coen brothers said to him, what are you doing? He goes, I'm listening. She's talking. He goes, no, you don't care what she's saying. You're just waiting for her to finish, so you can eat the rest of the food. So they were trying to coach some of that down with it. I thought that was funny. Okay, so now the deal Jerry brings to Wade and Stan Grossman, 40 acres for $750,000. So 18,000 and change an acre. Sounded like a good deal, according to even Stan, right, who was the skeptic. So it seems Jerry wants Wade to do the deal, if it is a real deal, so he can get the 750,000. What I thought was interesting, and we don't know what financial issues
Yeah.
that Jerry has, but they've got to be pretty big, because he wasn't even happy with the 10% finder's fee that would be $75,000 in 1996. That's a lot of money. He was obviously very desperate.
Yeah.
Right. So that wasn't even enough. But the key line, I thought, Jerry said, the deal could work out real good for me, Gene, and Scotty, Wade. And Wade's answer was, Gene and Scotty don't have to worry. Just say it all.
Yeah.
This is who he works for, his father-in-law, who he works for. So you can tell there might be a little bit of resentment there with little Jerry, right? Okay. And then, and the whole thing with the true coat, him making people pay extra for the whole thing.
Yeah.
That actually came from, I think one of the Coens had a real experience with that at a car dealership.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
We did too.
But he was a swimmer.
He was exactly that, a swimmer. Yeah. And even a sociopath, you would say. And I'll get to more on that later, because there was something really fascinating about his character. But so Brainerd, the home of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox, you know, as you would see, they showed that a few times, that statue isn't actually there, but that's okay. They moved it for the movie. Then it was kind of interesting, GMAC calling Jerry about the 320,000.
Right.
Oh, and Jerry rehearsing his call, how it will go with Wade before. That was something, I think if I remember right, he improvised that. And they let him keep it. Now, okay, so I'm starting here. Carl makes a series of stupid mistakes. Carl, the Steve Buscemi character. First, getting the killer Gare as his partner. Big mistake. Second, he doesn't put tags on the car he just got. So the trooper pulls it over. And then his I'll handle it third mistake, giving the guy $50. So that makes things worse. And then, of course, Gare ends up killing him. So there you go again. Yes.
I've never seen Gare again after.
Oh, yes.
He's done several things. I don't know if he had the blonde hair, because I'm pretty sure he dyed it for the role.
Janitor in a short series, I think, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Is that right?
That I don't know. There's a story on him in the trivia at the end where he regretted turning down a role in Miller's Crossing.
Okay.
And he was glad they called him to do this. So he only had 18 lines in the whole movie. By comparison, Carl had 150.
Yeah.
That was the whole point of it.
Yes.
Don't you ever talk?
No.
So mistake number 4, after Gare shoots him, Carl's very slow to get the body off, so witnesses see it.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing. And that, of course, means Gare has to chase him down and kill them. And there's more snow and fog and whiteout conditions again. And then we see Lou, the cop Marge is seen with, who wrote down the clue to the dealer plates. Oh, I'm sorry, I blew the line. He wrote down the clue to the license plates, DLR. She's like, don't you think that might be dealer?
Oh.
So yeah, I thought that was pretty fun. And then, of course, Wade wanted to negotiate the price of his daughter down from $1 million to $5 million. That was pretty classic. But to me, the funniest part of the movie was when Stan Grossman says to Jerry, after all this is happening with the kidnapping, "Is Scotty okay?" Do you remember the look on Jerry's face? He completely forgot he had a son. Completely, it was deer in headlights. And he's like, "Oh, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him." So I thought that was absolutely hysterical, and it's totally revealing of Jerry's character, and how terrible a person he is. So a question I had that I don't think was ever sufficiently answered, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Why did Marge meet Mike Yamagito?
Yeah.
That's what I just
But
said.
it's saying, why is that?
Why do you want that guy?
Apparently, what I could read, and took a while to find it, it was a little more character development for her outside of her marriage and her police work.
It was a fence.
This stuff on the floor. When something like that happens, there's a scene that's on the floor somewhere. They just didn't.
Yeah, that's it.
I understand what you're saying. I think you're right, Stan. I think they just left it in.
Yeah,
there
but
was
but there's
there was
other
a
stuff.
reason.
Yeah.
One was it humanized her,
Right.
her high school days and all.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if I sort of remember sounded like a really good story.
Yes.
And then someone came and said, he's a liar.
Yeah. Yeah, her
That was-
friend.
I
told
think
her.
that was
never
a
married.
clue that the sales
He's
guy,
living with his mother.
the sales guy didn't say anything truthful.
But do you remember that, looking at the whole movie, their eyes? The characters that were in the police and Marge, etc., always had the big eyes, this innocent look.
Well, so did
And
Jerry
she-
though.
Yeah.
Jerry, big eyes.
Yes, but those characters had this innocent look. And Marge really was innocent. She didn't even know about this lie.
Right,
from
right.
Mike. But the whole movie was like innocence versus not so innocent.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, she was so unlike a cop. I mean, the way she asked the questions.
Yeah.
I mean, cops don't interrogate like it. She's asking like she's, having a cup of coffee. It was just.
She was trying to disarm them.
Very
I thought,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that was.
It was like a Columbo thing.
Yeah.
So movie groups like this would have an additional topic of
Right.
conversation.
Or talk about it.
One that was brought up in another place was she got dressed up. To me, if she didn't get dressed up to go anyplace else.
That's right. That's what I thought was kind of a little,
Yeah.
why is she getting dressed up to meet this guy? Yeah, right, she was married and very pregnant. I was a little, wondering about that. But apparently the discussion was, or the writing said, it was just so she had a night out. It wasn't like, and they made it clear that when he wanted to sit next to her, she was like, no, I don't think I feel comfortable with that. So she did stop it there, but, yeah.
What I found was fascinating was the juxtaposition of the Minnesota nice, people being so sweet to each other, even Jerry, who
Yep.
acted nice. I mean,
Yes,
and
yes.
he's leaving the back out of the window and,
Yes.
yep, I'll be there, yep.
Right, he's trying to sneak out, right?
So this Minnesota nice, and then this the ugly Iowa.
Yep.
And the coldness of everything.
So what do you think the purpose is for that?
That's what it's like in Minnesota.
So interestingly enough, the Coen brothers' description of Minnesota was Siberia with family restaurants.
I don't think they like that line.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry, guys, I want to hear this. Yeah.
We've also had Jerry constantly doing the marketing. He's twice in the movie, he comes back with the food.
Yeah.
Oh, right, he was doing the shopping, yeah,
He was doing the shopping.
including when his wife got kidnapped.
Yeah, he didn't work, she didn't do anything.
Right,
But he would always be doing the shopping and bringing.
Right.
which again may also partly explain his resentment towards her and not really caring if she got kidnapped.
But I thought they'd explain what he wanted all that money.
That's
for.
No, I know, that
No
was a
idea
total
why he
mystery.
was so far.
Total mystery, yeah.
I a lot of money.
His facial.
Hundreds of thousands.
Were so unattractive that I wondered how would he get another part in the movie?
William H. Mason.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I have to tell you how hard he fought for this role. I'll get to that. Okay, so a couple other things. So I was going through Carl's mistakes, so all right, Carl was outraged that Wade came instead of Jerry, so he just shoots him after Shep beat him up. He killed the parking lot attendant too. And then he was all bloody from Wade's gunshot. He sees the $1 million and buries 920,000 of it in the middle of
Yes.
nowhere. And parks it with the red ice.
There's no end here. So what happens when the thaw happens?
I know. Well, I guess he was figuring he'd get it before that, right?
You know, there's more. The scene where they show the whole and miles of fence.
Miles of snow and fence.
Looks like Antarctica.
Looking at both directions along the fence line.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
I assumed that when he drove off and he escaped, that's where he went, that he got the money.
Right, you would think, right?
Yeah.
But what if they're
But
not-
what mistake did he make that prevented that?
Where do you start?
He argued with Gare about paying him off for the car,
Oh, yeah.
and that got him killed.
Oh, yeah.
Here he has $920,000 waiting, and he's arguing about not paying him 10,000 for the car, whatever, right, for half of the car. So that's why I was talking about stupid. That's stupid.
Very stupid.
Okay. And then Marge, Marge sees him stuffing the body parts in the wood chipper. And then in a kind of a, what would you call it? Poetic justice moment. He ends up running away like the witness ended up running away from him, and gets shot. Very similar setup.
But only in the leg.
Right.
Well, she's not a killer.
She wanted to.
I believe she aimed at his leg, right? And then, how the movie ends, the last line, Marge and Norm are together, 2 months until the baby. Okay.
No, but the highlight of that scene was that he got this award.
Right.
So got the killer and wasn't even discussed.
I thought it was really funny when he's in the cop car and she says to him, money isn't everything.
I don't
And then-
understand it.
Yeah, and then Norman and she are in bed and they're all excited about this 3-cent stamp.
Right.
So maybe money was everything to them. at that time.
You got a commission.
Yeah, you got a big position.
No, the honor.
I know,
That's the
but
other.
it was two scenes of
Yeah.
just.
But their relationship was, she always built him up. And he was disappointed he didn't get the other stamp, and she's
Right.
saying, no, this is, they use it,
Very
she always has
Right.
it. Brothers, I thought that was so funny, that you need the 3-cent stamp to add on to the stamp.
That's right.
I thought
Yeah.
that she played that movie very restrained on purpose.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the idea of her acting so stable and balanced and normal against this incredible, ugly, violent, ugly characters. And that she was very balanced and very supportive and caring. 3-cent stamp, that's really important because, people need it when the stamp price goes up.
Right.
So it was she was very, very sweet, lovable character. I just felt inside she was such a balance to the ugliness because that movie was so ugly, violent.
Yeah.
That people could behave that way, the sociopaths.
So that kind of gets to the point from what I read of several critics said that the Coen brothers were trying to make the point that's the Midwest, the hypocrisy they were skewering of the Midwest, that the nice and friendly on the outside and the really, really dark is the part that's hidden. Yes.
Also, I just mentioned part of it is that it was Scandinavian, and if you think of Scandinavian furniture, Scandinavian design, Scandinavian decoration, it's very
Cold, minimalist.
minimalist.
High suicide.
But there's no crime in
So
Scandinavia.
you're not over the top, you're not gonna get this kind of emotion.
What about the
So to be
Vikings?
Ed, there's a question here.
Yes.
Was this one of the Coen's first movies at this scale?
It was we kind of put them on the map, but no, let's see, it was Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, Miller's Crossing. They had a few Barton
They had,
things,
right.
Hudsucker Proxy, and then this.
So they had no trouble selling this film?
No.
No.
Nope.
I have a question. This is regarded as one of the top films, whether it's a cult classic or.
Yeah, it's in
I
one of the
wonder
list of
why.
top 100.
What do people think of why it is up there like Lebowski or something where?
Sure.
Well, I think if you're a Coen Brothers fan, they're absurd with their, and the whole movie is tongue in cheek, and you won't, because to me, the violence, I didn't like it, but I saw it as humor in many ways. And the one film that I have to say that after that, nothing was, if we saw Clockwork Orange, when you go, anything after that was okay.
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, okay, so to address your point, Bart, I'm gonna read some of the critics' quotes, all right? So, this is from the UK, Kevin Maher. The North Dakota setting is icily evocative, the supporting characters perfectly pitched, while the air of sadness that blankets the film like snow adds genuine profundity. Score 5 out of 5. Peter Bradshaw, who I've quoted before, he's from The Guardian, also UK. Its brilliance lies in making the forces of law and order look as interesting and funny as the bad guys. He gave it a 5 out of 5. Danny Lee in the Financial Times. McDormand aside, the secret might be the perfect pitch of the black comedy. The two elements in rare harmony. Also, score 5 out of 5. Josh Larson said this is where the Coen's craft fully matured. He gave it a 4 out of 4. This was kind of interesting. This is Sarah Brinks. The Coen's dialogue is snappy and fun, and they know how to ride the line between serious and funny. Their tendency towards moments of horrific violence doesn't always work for me, but that is one of their signatures, and I can usually get past it. So I kind of identified with that. Adam Naiman in The Ringer wrote, the movie stands as a pseudo-thesis of the things the Coen brothers have been interested in all along. Another one, Mike Massey gave it a 10 out of 10. Calls it a riveting drama of death, dismemberment, small town criminality, and exaggerated accents. Now another one wrote, he gave it 3.5 out of 4, Richard Probst. That Fargo, as wonderful as it was, is a film I will never again need to revisit. Now here, and this may be part of the answer to your question, Bart. Alan Almacar in the MacGuffin wrote, it's a classic story of unique quirkiness where the characters themselves are just as memorable as the events that unfold. Now, I'm going to get to one of the critics. This is kind of funny. Critic Chris Hewitt from the St. Paul Pioneer Press in Minnesota. Fargo is the best movie ever made in Minnesota. Also the meanest. Also the meanest. So I wanted to get to the negatives. This is here. Yeah, I think here we go. Yep. Okay. This one critic, he was criticizing it as an action film that disregards the basic principle of the genre, that character is expressed in action. I would completely disagree. I do not think of this as an action film. I thought it was a character study, and I think his perspective was wrong. So he based a lot of it on the fact that, as an action film, it didn't really work for him. Well, I don't really think it's an action film. But this one I thought was really, oh no, did I go past it? Oh, here it is. I wanted to get this. I didn't want to forget this. Macy begged the directors for the role of Jerry Lundegaard. He did 2 readings for the part and became convinced he was the best man for the role. When the Coens didn't get back to him, he flew to New York where they were starting production and said, I'm very, very worried you are going to screw up this movie by giving this role to somebody else. It's my role and I'll shoot your dogs if you don't give it. He stated in an interview that despite evidence to the contrary, he did hardly any ad-libbing at all. Most of his characters' stuttering mannerisms were written in the script exactly the way he does them in the film. Okay, I did want to mention that, but yes, this is it. Okay, all right. From The Independent. The title was Bordering on the Vacant. That's the title. Oh, but yeah, he was criticizing the as an action film, right? He said, Frances McDormand's acting is the main reason for seeing the film. Without ever disclosing an intelligence beyond what the screenwriters indicate, she makes Marge warm even when she's a comic figure. This is no small thing, seeing that she has been directed, for instance, to mouth thank you to the waitress for her Coke, even though she is just being told by a friend for the first time about his wife's leukemia. There are a few scenes of Marge's that suggest a more interesting film than Fargo, scenes that offer contrasting versions of blankness. At one point, she interviews Shep Proudfoot, a Native American whose stereotypical inexpressiveness is compounded by his involvement in a crime. Shep says virtually nothing, yet it is possible to see that this dumb, easygoing woman, or this woman whose culture requires a fair facsimile of dumbness from its women, has put enormous pressure on them. So that was a pretty memorable scene. And then they talk about the yeah, you betcha, and that kind of discussion. Okay. We have a sense of okay. We are right with Marge. We have an apparent sense of an apparently unsophisticated person who can handle most situations. For a moment, the Coens seem to be taking Minnesota seriously. It's typical of their own blankness, though, their preference for safe distance from human involvement, that Mike Yanagita should turn out to be deranged, so that the joke is on Marge after all. Thought that was kind of an interesting way to end it. Okay, I've got some trivia which there's a lot of fun stuff to get to about behind the scenes stuff on the movie. Did anyone have any other comments they wanted to make about the plot or the directing or the tone or anything? Yes. Daniel.
I tried to figure out why the statue was there, the Paul Bunyan statue kept going past it.
Yeah, exactly. A little absurdity, a little contrast, all the bright colors with the white snow. And not only now Paul Bunyan's face, he's smiling and he's holding an axe. Right. I thought that kind of goes along with their whole, kind of
It's like a tall tale.
their way they operate.
Happy lumberjack.
He wasn't, I was saying a tall tale.
He's a lumberjack and he's okay, right? Okay, different movie. So.
You never mentioned about prostitutes.
Okay, I actually can get to that in the trivia section. They're in here.
Funny looking, he's funny looking.
Right, she's trying to get in through, and all I could say was, oh, he was the funny looking one. And then the other person who said he was funny looking was the guy who, another mistake of Carl, he was bragging about killing someone and he's running crazy at the lake. He's calling the bartender. So the guy called him in and he's like, well, describe him. Well, he was funny looking.
Yeah.
So like I said, they wrote the part. For sure. John Carroll Lynch, that's who played the husband. All right. And he was in the Aaron Sorkin movie with the trial, the Chicago 7. He was one of the main guys in that. Okay.
He was in the Drew Carey show. He married me.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in several movies, but he's a very good character. Oh, the snowplow that drives past the motel at the end of the film was not part of the script. Signs in the area warned motorists not to drive through due to the filming, but a state employee ignored them. The F word and its derivatives were said 75 times, mostly by Carl. He says 10 of these during Wade Gustafson's death scene. And that was Wade Gustafson was played by Harv Presnell, who hadn't done a movie in over 10 years, like maybe 20. He was basically retired, so he came out for this one. When Steve Buscemi's character Carl calls Jerry for the deal to be done, he tells him 30 minutes and we'll wrap this up. From that moment, the film's running time left is exactly 30 minutes.
Wow.
Another little in joke. The actors used a book called How to Talk Minnesotan to help with their accent. There's only one scene shot on a bright and sunny day, and the cinematographer, Sir Roger Deakins, hated that it was sunny, feeling it went against the movie's mood. Frances McDormand was looking around for a role to play as a killer or prostitute, and she was hesitant to play a pregnant cop. When I started working on it, I realized it was one of the best gifts that I've ever been given. Now, to get your question about the hookers. When working on her Minnesota accent for the film, McDormand worked with Larissa Kokernot, who was hooker number 1. She referred to her accent and mannerisms as Minnesota nice. Yeah, the scene where the couple tries to make a deal with Jerry is based on Ethan Coen's real-life encounter with the car salesman. It's almost a verbatim transcript of my experience.
I had that, it's undercoated. I didn't want it undercoated. Well, it was undercoated. You got to pay for the undercoat. I never asked for undercoating.
Exactly. The scene where the couple tries, I got that. Even though the movie takes place mostly in Brainerd, the Coen brothers decided to call it Fargo because they liked the sound of it for a title. They said Brainerd was not cool enough. Fargo's just really where Jerry meets the two hoods he hires to kidnap his wife. William H. Macy was doodling between takes, and they decided to use that in the scene where he was scribbling while he was on the phone. Okay, I mentioned that already. Frances McDormand wore a pregnancy pillow filled with bird seed to simulate her pregnant belly. She says she didn't deliberately try to move in a pregnant way. It simply came as a natural response to having the extra weight. Filming began in January of 1995 when the region was experiencing its second warmest winter in 100 years. So the filming of the outdoor scenes had to be moved all over Minnesota, North Dakota, and Canada, and much of the snow was actually artificial.
Oh my goodness.
So you figure you're shooting in late January, you're not gonna have a problem with snow up there. Well, they did. The wood chipper is now on display that was used in the movie in the Fargo Moorhead Visitor Center.
With the legs? With the legs sticking out.
I'm not going to find out.
The socks.
The socks. That
So
was,
now Siskel and Ebert screened the movie. When they first watched it together, Siskel leans over to Ebert and said with a smile, "This is why we love movies." They named it their best film of 1996. 3 weeks into the shooting, the Coens revealed to their cast and crew that it was not, in fact, based on a true story.
But I think that was why I.
All right, yeah, so they wrote the scene, the Coens wrote the scene at the restaurant with Mike, Yamagita or whatever, to develop Marge's character outside of the case or her marriage. Peter Stormare, the blonde killer, Gare, later formed a band called Blonde from Fargo as an homage to his role. The kidnapping victim, Jean Lundegard, was actually played by Kristen Rudrud, who was actually born in Fargo. And then this is a funny story about Frances McDormand's pregnancy outfit. She actually accidentally left her suit, her pregnancy suit, in the trailer one night. Remember, it was cold there. The silicone breasts in the suit froze, and one of them exploded on the set the next day.
Oh, wow.
Now, the name Jerry Lundegard was named after a film critic named Bob Lundegard. And when he saw the film at a screening with the Coen brothers, he jokingly said to them, "You'll be seeing my lawyers in the morning." All right, I won't get into that one. In every scene they have together, Marge and Norm are either lying in bed or eating.
right.
Yeah, Harv Presnell hadn't made a movie in 20 years when he got cast as Wade. Oh, okay, this is what I want to mention. You remember the murder victim who, you remember the credits in the screen? There was a symbol next to one of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did that symbol remind you of? Right, and where was the movie made? Minnesota, there you go. So the character, the guy who it was actually J. Todd Anderson, who was a storyboard artist who works with the Coen brothers regularly. So he played the murder victim and was in on the fact that they were going to do that Prince thing. Frances McDormand worked with a pregnant cop from St. Paul to research the role. Yeah, William H. Macy came up with the idea for Jerry to rehearse what he was going to say on the phone. Okay, I mentioned that.
Answer the phone.
Approaching Brainerd from the south, you see a statue of Paul Bunyan with a sign reading, "Welcome to Brainerd." In reality, Brainerd has no such statue. Paul Bunyan Amusement Park, located just outside Brainerd, had a huge statue of Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. The park is now at This Old Farm, which is between Brainerd and Garrison. None of the movie scenes were actually filmed in Fargo, interior or exterior. The bar at the beginning of the movie is in northeast Minneapolis. Peter Stormare, who was actually from Sweden, spent his off days visiting nearby cities with Swedish names. Now, this is kind of interesting. Tom Hanks said in an interview for CNN's The Movies, he considers this film to be a perfect film on every level. Tom Hanks.
Wow.
When Jerry was seen
Susan Kahn just called.
phone to the GMAC guy who was asking him all these questions that he didn't want to have to answer. The scene was set up with the vertical blinds in his office windows open to give him the appearance that he was in a jail cell with bars. Okay, when you see there's a scene with where Marge, Mrs. Lundegard, sorry, gets kidnapped. You see Minnesota talk show host. That was an actual scene from the 80s and 90s. They were hosting a show called Good Company. And the Minnesotan "yeah" appears 179 times in the script. William H. Macy's only Oscar nomination. John Kasich wrote his book, Stand for Something, The Battle for America's Soul. And in his book, 3 pages describe his hatred for this film. Well, I guess how it skewers America, Midwestern America particularly. So.
Yeah.
Most of the snow is artificial. Okay, got that ready. All right. John Carroll Lynch, again, the guy who played Norm, the husband, credits this film as starting his film career as he and 2/3 of the cast had been from the Minnesota area. His character was written as a former police officer, and I mentioned that, and acted as, he and Marge switched that over. So right, when they're filming it, he's eating and looking at his wife intently. The Coens, Joel Coen said to him, he doesn't care about any of this. He's just waiting for her to be done so he can eat the food. Bruce Paltrow and Robert Palm wrote a 1997 pilot for a TV adaptation featuring Marge Gunderson and Officer Lou, but it was not picked up. It wound up as a TV movie called Fargo in 2003. Now, you know, there is a TV series, Fargo. That started in 2014 by Noah Hawley. It's set in the same universe as the film, did not include the same characters, but it features actors who have previously starred in Coen Brothers films. The editor was credited as Roderick Jaynes, Jaynes. That's one of 7 nominees for an Academy Award on this film. The Coens cooked up a scheme to have it's not really a person, it's the Coen brothers. They used the pseudonym for their editing credit. When they got nominated, they said, "Oh, if we win, they were going to have Albert Finney appear in disguise as quote, fusty old British cutter from Hayward's Heath in case they won." But the Academy said, "No, you're not doing it." Fargo is in company with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Blair Witch Project, all being presented as true stories when they were first presented. Spoilers, here we go. So they put the based on true story, the Coen brothers, so the viewer would be more willing, this is from IMDb, almost all of this, by the way. So the viewer would be more willing to suspend disbelief in the story. An urban legend even says that people have gone to search Minnesota for the briefcase and come to a bad end.
That's good. That's a good line.
That's good. Of the body count list of 7 people, 5 were killed by Gare and 2 by Carl. Marge only fires her gun twice the whole movie. She missed once. I mentioned she doesn't come until the 3rd through. Okay, I mentioned about the guy who was the real wood chipper getting out. Right, and I mentioned that. And okay, now this is an interesting thing they put at the end here. Marge and Jerry actually have, they say, identical personalities. Think about that. When they're dealing with the general public, anyway, you made this point too, W. They come across perky in the face of extreme chaos. Again, that chaos word again. A perkiness that hides their own ruthlessness. Jerry comes across as sweet, simple, naive, leave it to Beaver dad type, except when you realize he's a cold-blooded psychopath who's arranged for the kidnapping of his own wife and puts the events in motion that lead to 4 more brutal slayings. Marge comes across as a sweet, mild-mannered lady reporter type, a nice girl doing her job that just wants to be friends with everybody, until you realize she's a ruthlessly brilliant homicide detective who's stalking 3 murderers, and she brilliantly foils the criminals, tracks them all down, ends up capturing and jailing 2 of the kingpins. All the while, she's acting like a sweet June Cleaver type. They both pretend to be gentle and unassuming when in reality they're not. And in a way, that's the Coen brothers' commentary on Midwest culture and hypocrisy in general. The vicious underside of the glossy American dream, much the same way David Lynch dissected and vivisected American suburban life 10 years earlier with Blue Velvet.
I wish it didn't say Blue Velvet.
Which definitely.
Opening scene was the gorgeousness of the lawn mastered perfectly before you go into then you show the ugliness of all the characters.
And I actually like Mulholland Drive better. David Lynch's another film, Mulholland Drive, which I thought was phenomenal. So.
If they didn't grow up in Minnesota, they wouldn't be able to write.
I wanted to just add one thing. I read an interview with Steve Buscemi, and you know his ugliness, his ugly teeth. People have always said, "Why don't you can afford to have your teeth fixed?" He said, "Well, but I wouldn't be a good character actor. I prefer those teeth."
He also was burned in a fire and
really
had himself redone, I guess, cosmetic. Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a semi-personal question, which you don't have to answer per se? There have been a few blockbuster films, or at least the motion picture industry thinks they're blockbuster. And one of them happens to be Napoleon. We won't talk about a couple of others in the atomic bomb and stuff, but Napoleon is the very different opinions about the historical value and whatever. But what the reason I'm asking is that you who pay such attention, how many reviews did you read of Napoleon?
The new one, the brand new one?
Yeah, right.
It's just coming out now, so I only saw a couple of them. I'm not even sure they were actual reviews. They were just articles about it coming out. But it's Ridley Scott, so I'm gonna want to see it. He made Alien, which was brilliant. He made a bunch of other movies that were pretty brilliant. So I'm gonna want to see it.
But you're gonna read a number of different reviews.
Sure.
There's a whole thing that he's.
Would I mind asking you which kind of publications you really read?
I jump around. It used to be, I would Siskel and Ebert, Vincent Canby in the New York Times, Richard Roper was pretty good, David Anson in Newsweek. I was never a Pauline Kael fan. She hated 2001, and I kind of hated her for hating that.
How about the New York? How about the New Yorker? You read the...
Sometimes, yep. Sometimes I read the New Yorker. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at all different things. I'll listen to NPR and I'll watch Fox News. I'll watch CNN. Once in a while, I'll even watch MSNBC. So I try to get a good varied viewpoint.
That's really bad.
Okay.
Another piece of trivia that I came across was Jean, when she was kidnapped and like hooded and such. That wasn't the original actress. Once she was hooded, it was not her, either for money or releasing her from the filming, but that's not her.
No, it's probably a stunt. Yeah. She was running around,
out in the field.
Yeah,
They wanted to get hurt.
Right, exactly.
There's more movie to do.
No, but she's also the cold cabin by the oven, things like that. It was not her. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was a local actress, so they could have.
It was good.
And I have not heard tonight, why it is still considered like in the realm of Godfather, in the realm, why is it such?
I think the twists and turns, like you don't,
Well,
the movie is great when you like what's gonna happen, and like things get worse and worse and worse. And then that's what it's sort of.
It's a satire on the American values, the American dreams, and the dark undercurrent.
But you laugh, but you don't cry. You're not emotionally involved at
Right,
all.
right. You don't really care too much about the characters, a little about Marge, maybe.
I'm watching Seinfeld.
Nobody
I care more about them.
I don't.
But it was the balance of the humor and the darkness, and I'm guessing that that was considered pretty successfully done.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Well done.
All right. All right, thank you. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Can we wish you a happy holiday?
Thank you, yes. All right, where'd the mouse go?
Hanging out on the board.
Hi.
On the right hand side.
Oh, here.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Good night.
I was trying to figure out what was going down now.